slide. I don't know, because it's very much related to the group work. Yeah. So can we switch to the other one? Yeah. 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 And then we have the other one we put up. This one. Yes. Yes. Yeah. Then we will start with that one. And then, yeah. Ready? Yeah. Okay. Good morning, everybody. So now we are into the second week of this exciting course. I hope so, on circular sustainable business models, and we have been through a lot of the key elements around circular and sustainable business models. We have looked into different terms, and now we are put in a situation where we have to come a little bit closer on how do we really measure how green, environmental friendly the business models actually are, and how sustainable and circular they are. But let's start with the green first, the environmental dimension. So next. So what we learned is that it's seldom that you start with what we would call a pure green business model. It's like a journey where you most often take, as we saw also the industry, you take a kind of what we can call a type of black business models, and then you turn it slowly into become a green. The big question is if you ever will have it pure green. And to do this, we identified 4 areas. You remember, we identified material and resources as one big box. The second one was the waste, and the third one was the pollution, included the CO2 emission, and then the last one was the biodiversity. So when we had defined this, then we asked ourselves the question, how on earth can you find out about material and resources, how green they are? And we discovered several technologies that can be used, and probably there are many that we as a research group do not know about. But I'm going to show you a little bit about how we use this technology to continuously measure it. So next. And to do this, I actually use and come around some cases, because then it's like, instead of me just talking about some technology out there, let's have a look into how can you actually use it. So one software that we and also hardware that we found was used on a restaurant in Denmark, a very nice restaurant where a lot of people come around the summer, and they actually have a business model where they have a vacation from round about last part of October until April, May. So you can see that's a wonderful business. You don't only have to work 5-6 months, and then you have vacation. Then you go to Spain and you swim and you have a nice time. So this restaurant has different equipment that it uses inside the restaurant. It is very optimized They have about 25 people working in the restaurant, and it's a restaurant where most of the places are outside. So you sit in the open, and then you have kind of some technology that can bring these kind of tables under cover, so that it works with some automatic system, and then you can have I would estimate something around 100 guests in the restaurant. The restaurant is placed in an old building that was former used for producing ice for the fishermen. And even this ice was exported to Germany. All the houses, you see the red ones on the back side, they are back from the 1900 and a little bit later. And that means that you are simply not allowed to change anything in the building. You have to stick to the buildings. And you know, this is not what you normally think about when you are thinking about that what you can actually do. You think that everything is flexible, you can do whatever you like. But here you actually have a situation where we have to change something? No, okay, yes. Where we have a building that is protected, and you are not allowed, for example, to make isolation, change the building construction, and so on. And this can be very much related to, I remember there was one of you that were working with tourism and tourism business models. Here you have actually something that is very often the case when we are working with these kinds of businesses. So if you imagine you have a restaurant, and in this restaurant you have a fridge, you have oven, you have coolers for one thing that is very important in Denmark, that is beer. If you don't have a beer in a restaurant, then you have no customers. You have also to protect the wine, because you have to remember the building is not isolated. So when it gets up to 40, 35 degree in Denmark, then the house starts to get hot, and then the wine can't cope with it. Then of course there are some restriction on a restaurant, because it has to live up to a standard of a restaurant. So the cleaning, how many times they clean both the restaurant and the toilets and everything, that is checked very, very detailed. And if the restaurant does not live up to these standards, then you actually get a face put on the window of the restaurant. And if you have not lived up to it, will have a very sad face. And then you can get a normal face, and then you can get a smiling face, and that indicates that you live up to all the standards. So that's the reason why they have to really, really look into all parts of the restaurant. Then on the back side of the restaurant, they have containers. So containers that store all their food, raw material for making, fish dishes. They have beef, also, sorry about that. They have chicken, they have ice cream, they have a lot of things in there. But this container also uses electricity. The beer, when you get a draft of beer, then it goes like this, and this is cooled. And if you use this technology, you should think about the famous Danish business called Danfoss, Danish business, because they make all the systems. but that also takes a lot of energy. So if you imagine that you have all the restaurant, all the beer equipment, you have the fridge, you have the container and everything, then this business called Remoni has developed a sensor, or actually different kinds of sensors that you can just plug on the different devices. So it's like, physical, you just come in very easy, and then you plug it on the fridge, on the oven, on the dishwasher, on the container, and so on. Very, very easy system. And then you just set up a wireless hub, and then it starts to transport data from the individual devices. And you can see here, you can name all the devices as the names that you are using in the restaurant. That's not something that the software engineer has to do. You just go in, then you tap, okay, I have a bottle cooler, I have a dishwasher, I have another cooler, I have another cooler, I have an ice fridge, I have another cooler, I have an oven, and so on. So I hope you get an impression on how this actually works. Once you have set up the system, you don't have to change anything in the system with the fixed electricity system. Water, it can also measure water. So how much water are you using? It can measure the temperature, how much heat you are using, and all these kind of things. Then you just set it up, and then it starts to send you data. And that means that you very, very precisely can actually figure out what are you using of electricity, what are you using of water, and then with some small, easy number formulas, you can then also calculate how much CO2 emission you are actually generating. And that means that the three first parameters that we talked about before, we are very close to be able to measure that. Of course, the waste has not been built into it, but many other things, which I will show you in the next case example, has actually been built into it. Next. So here you see the device is very, very easy. You have the string that goes to the fridge, and then you just wrap it around the wire, and then it starts to communicate to the hub, and then you get all the data out here. This system is one of many, many, many systems. I don't know if you already know some of these, probably, but this actually then starts to generate data. And our students, they sit 200 kilometers away, and then they start to analyze what is going on in the business. And they get some measurements all the time where how many kilowatts the business is using, how much water, and so on. So next. So the exciting thing here is, of course, to find out when are we using energy, and which devices are using energy, for example, at what time. And this can be then shown every 5 minutes. But here we just choose a graph where we have days, so 16th of August, 17th of August, 18th of August, 19, 20, and so on. So it means actually the you can see here that I think it's about 10 o'clock, something like 11 o'clock. Then it goes up, and then it starts to you start to use energy until maybe 21 in the evening. So it actually shows very clearly the CEO and those responsible on how are we actually working with our resources. And then it makes also graph so that you can compare on the different devices. So you can see exactly where it does give sense to intervene. So if it's just a small amount of energy, it doesn't actually give a sense to intervene. It will be much better to see if we could intervene in a place where it really makes a difference for the business. So in this case, we found out that the container on the backside, the fridge on the backsides were actually consuming a lot of energy, and then the oven was also taking a lot of energy. And then we started to discuss with management, and this is what also was I told you the other day on this, the one that is responsible for sustainability. That is that we have to get the CEO involved. So once the CEO he gets a picture of this, then he starts to get eager. Then his pocket comes up, and then he starts to think about where should I invest. So he's much more motivated. So in this case, he said, we will invest in the container and the fridge on the backside so that we will have solar cells on top of it. That was the first, and then we calculated the investment. And you remember we talked about yesterday, Saturday, we talked about CapEx. So it means actually we are now investing in a business model where we actually take the investment, and that's a CapEx cost, capital expensive, and we are taking it on the left side of the B-board. And then, we are investing some amount of money. Then the next question is, when do we have the return on investment? And then we set it into operation. And then, of course, we have also calculated the operation costs so that we get the OPEX overview also. In this case, it was a little bit peculiar because the manager, we talked about, this green tea is very heavy. I'll just have a little bit more of it. The manager, he are very, very keen on optimizing his business. That means that when the season starts, he invite all 25 employees to train a week before they open the restaurant. Can you imagine? I have never heard about it before. So he invites them with full weights just to train all the dishes and train the whole system, the value chain, what kind of value chain function they are carrying out. And that means that it's totally optimized, the whole restaurant. He learned that from Spain. He discovered a Spanish restaurant where they were much more effective. They were having much more customers. And then he laid down at the beach together with his daughter. And then he wrote up, after spending several evenings there, what did they actually do? And then he copied the value chain functions and put it into his business model up at the north of Denmark. Do you get my point? So it's actually like, here we have the Spanish restaurant over here. We have completely defined, as you did the other day, how the business model work. Then he takes that value chain function and then he transport it over to this one, and then he plugs it in. So that's why I'm sorry to say I try to push you to do this. Try to understand your business model fully, deeply, because that's what you can do when you start to have all your business model fully mapped up. Then you can start, to steal from one and put it into another one. So, for example, in the restaurant, there is a culture. You can never say no. Even if there is coming 10 orders into the kitchen, there's only one lady that can say no in the business, in the restaurant. Nobody else can say no. They can only say yes, sir, yes, sir, yes, sir. And that means that she has totally, completely overview of the whole restaurant. And she knows exactly which business models, so that could be a fish dish, is operated. And that gives an extremely effective and efficient business here. Then every evening they start to say, they end the day on discussing what did we learn today, where did we have some challenges, and how can we improve it tomorrow. So that's how they do it. I was very excited to work with them. Let's go next. So we see here a variance of different things. I think this is water. We see that it's the resources are used very different. But here comes another thing, and that is, and I don't know if it's allowed, so don't tell it outside of India. They also do video recording of all the employees. So that means that you can exactly combine the use of material and resources and the way they are working to individuals. So that means that you can actually track if they have more people that cooks, if this cook is using more resources than that cook. So you see, now it gets very detailed. I am not sure you're not doing something that is a little bit against the GDPR rules and so on. But nevertheless, that's how they work with it. And it gives a very effective system. Okay, next. Oh, I think I'll just go one thing back. So, of course, as a researcher and as a research group, we are deeply involved in this. We call it participative action research. That's the method that we use. So that means that we start to download when we meet the business, and then we start to work with them, and then have a look at the data. So what happens is we are setting up a meeting after some weeks, and then we meet with the CEO, and he's very happy about it. And we also like it very much because we can see a lot of things and so on. And then in just the end of the meeting, then we tell him, it was in a November month, that you know what? You have actually some of your equipment that are using energy right now, off season. And he said, no, that cannot be true. We can see it. Your devices are using energy right now, and you have closed down. There shouldn't be any electricity consumed right now, but nevertheless, it was. Then he said, this cannot be true. The software is wrong. The texts are wrong. You are stupid researchers. I said, no. We are not stupid. we are just doing our job and informing you that this is actually going on right now. So we jumped into the cars, drove down to the restaurants. He called his electricians, and it was actually correct because the building were old. So somebody had, you know, done something wrong with the main electricity system, so it didn't really close down. So it was actually sucking electricity out of it, and this electricity was used by the neighbor restaurant. So this is something where you can really come close to the green parameters if you have technology to help you. Any questions to this? I would suppose that this also exists in India. I don't know if you have played with it, but it gives a lot of things. So yesterday I visited a business here in your area, and he was using it as to measure the opposite. How much energy were he producing from solar cells? And he was very happy, man, because tea is not always a good business, but electricity is a very good business model. So he was actually able to generate an extra business model where he was generating electricity via his solar cell. We'll come back to that. Okay, no questions. So you remember, I will report back to management that you have understood everything here. So it's electricities, it's material, it's waste, it is CO2 emission and pollution. You can treasure, I would say, everything. It's just to find the technology and then set it up, and then you have a much better raw material to decide what to do. So let's change to another business. It's a little bit in the same area. So next. So this business is producing fronts. When you have a kitchen, you have doors here in the front where you have your plates, you have your knives, you have everything. So they are famous of producing the fronters, and especially they can make this into special wood, and you can get literally any kind of wood you would like to have. And he has a production where this is the CEO and owner of the business, and he can literally see everything on production data. So when we met this young man, then he was highly interested to find out how could he reduce his energy consumption. And then we also told him that you can actually be producing energy if you like. He uses typically electricity, he uses gas, and then he wanted to also change into powering his factory with 250 employees with green power. And then we did exactly the same. We put on all the devices, and then we started to find out what was going on in the business. And together with his manager, we found out that on electricity, he could change to solar cells. So solar cells on the roofs was one thing he could try to think about, invest in. And we also found a possibility that he could have that funded. So now we are coming to the other term that we talked a little bit about, that is a capping. So we calculated a budget of how much it would cost to put solar cells on his roofs. And then that was, I can't remember the number exactly, but then we went to the government and said this business wants to invest this amount to become green. How much will you subsidize for that? So he got a fairly good amount of money so that he could reduce his capex cost to, I think it was about, he could reduce it with 75%. So that means that the business model creeps up into the green area close to, and then we started to monitor the whole factory. And one thing we found out was because they were very, very professional, they knew, they thought 100% about the business, how it was working. Then we found out at 3 o'clock, they start at about 6 o'clock in the morning, even 5 o'clock. Some starts at 5 o'clock, and that is because when you put this surface on, you have to have use a kind of an oven that heats up. So when the first one starts in the morning, they start at 5 o'clock, and then they start to heat up the oven. And then, of course, you can see on our monitors, then the energy consumption starts to grow very, very high. And then we found out that this device was using, I think it was about 30% of the whole factory's energy. And another thing we found out is that 1500, when everybody was out of the door going home, then we found out that there was one device that was using enormous amount of energy. And we came there and we went around and we looked and we looked and we looked. And then suddenly we discovered a young boy of 14 years. He had the job of cleaning all the machines so they were prepared for next day. So he used air to blow all the dust off the machines. So what he did was he just went in, like a boy can do, and then pushed the button, and then the whole system started up. And then he had nice amount of air, so he could play with this machine and get everything cleaned. And we could see immediately on the monitors it go up like this, and the managers, said, "What? This cannot be true. This is not how our business are working. We have to do something." So they went down to him and said, "No, you cannot do that." And then it went on. And the thing was that when he pushed the button, it actually had an electronic that kept this machine on for 4 hours. So can you imagine that so all these small incidents shows where you can have advantage of the technology. Another thing is that there are some pipes around the factory. I don't know if you can see them exactly here. These pipes, they transport the air. And what we found out is that in the pipes, if there is small holes where the air can come out, that little hole can actually sometimes mean on one day, 12,000, let me see if it's right, 12,000 INR. And then you can maybe imagine if they have 5 holes or 10 holes. So it means that if we could track these small little holes in their system, then we could save enormous amount of money for the business. Are we keeping time? Okay. So you see, any business has different places where you can go in and intervene. So next. This one we mentioned one of the first days. That was the Swedish business, Kungshamn Fisk, and that was primarily about their cooling frost systems, where they had to have some special lights. And these lights we put also measurements devices on. The only thing is that these measurement devices, when they get into a frost of about 20 degrees minus or something around there, then the devices, they can get trouble. So that the accuracy of the measurement might not always be good. Let's go for the next. And here you see all this. I told about the ice machine and the different machines that makes it possible to make ice. We could exactly go down and say, okay, it's right here that there is something taking our money on the bottom line. You remember when we have a business model, we have the turnover, and then we have the cost, and the more we can press these two, the cost down and the turnover up, then the more we will earn, the better it will look in the B board. So innovation of circular and sustainable business model is not just about raising the turnover, creating a new business model or changing business models. It's about having a look into the turnover and the cost. And of course, those who are responsible for sales, they are not responsible for the cost. That's the production managers and others. So we have to involve the whole business, all employees, in finding out how we can optimize the business. So next. Okay, I think maybe slightly I have also come around this case. This is Smemek, and Smemek is they are producing balconies for large family homes, and these balconies they're producing with steel, and and here they were not, the CEO was not focused on electricity and energy reducing, but he was interested in finding out what was in the steel and the quality of the steel, because two things: he wants to measure if the steel was green, and the second one was he wanted to secure that the steel was actually living up to the standards he was given by his supplier. And that was actually a middleman. So it was not the factory that produces the steel, but it was actually the one that was in between his factory and the steel producer. So why he wanted that was that if you can imagine that he has got steel in and he has made it in his factory, and then it's implemented and set up at these large family houses. And then after some time, he finds out that, or the customer finds out that the steel starts to corrode, corrosion gets into it, so it gets small bubbles. Then he has to drag all these down, or those who are challenging, because it could be that one balcony is okay, the other one is not okay, because the producer of steel, he has used different raw material in his steel production. So for example, the first one, it could be filled up with old bikes that has been melted up and used, because it's good to reuse material, but that was not good for the final thing. So he was interested to find out with some sensors what was actually into the steel. Yes, next. So maybe are we going to have a small break? 5 minutes, or shall we continue? We continue. Okay. I have a 5 minutes. Okay, but then I'll give you an introduction to what we are now going to work into. So this was different examples of how you can work with measuring with technology on the green parameter. But what we see is that, and I don't know if you have already. Yeah. Oh, sorry. Yes. Sis.
Is it really possible to make a business model fully sustainable? As I want to make my business fully sustainable, I want to transform the energy into the solar energy.
Yeah.
So for that reason, the solar panels that I require, it should be like when we produce that solar panels, it requires mining the silicons from the earth. So it also impact our art and the environmental situations and also the water pollution.
Yeah.
So that in other way, it also like impacting the environment also.
Yes.
So if I'm as a business owner, like implementing the solar panels for converting it to sustainable or like sustainable business model, but in the other way, it's also impacting the environment. So
Exactly. And I think it's a wonderful question because the big question is: can we hope that we will be able to make everything circular and sustainable? And the answer is, I think we are on a very complex journey. And if you look at the 7 dimensions you have in front of you on the floor, you have to consider all of these dimensions to become pure green. If we look at the environmental perspective, and then I learned this morning there was a nice young lady in this room that are working with supply chain. And supply chain, yes, I can maybe make my business green or close to green. But if I take into consideration the whole supply chain, then I also have to have the Romanian coal steel producer to become green. I have to be sure that the electricity business, when they provide me with electricity, that they are actually giving me green electricity and not a mix of green and black electricity. So I think in theoretical situation, it can maybe be that we can become green all over, pure, but practically, I think it's extremely difficult. Uh, and it's also because, if we have a grid that has to provide us with energy, and it suddenly stops all the electricity in here, you want to have electricity, so you turn to the next provider, and that could be green, or sorry, black energy. Can I also just have the last comment here, and that is, so biogas and solar energy and wind energy has been, firstly, solar energy and wind energy has been considered green. Okay, but solar energy and wind energy, they have difficulties with supplying us with all energy needed. And especially if the wind does not blow or the sun is not there. Then thirdly, they classified biogas, at least in Denmark and also some other European countries, as green energy. And again, you can have a discussion. The transport of manure to a biogas plant, have you taken that into calculation? This is addressing the supply chain. So in EU, not so much in US, but in EU, they want to be green. And they could see that the energy consumption was growing like this, and maybe a lot of it is also going to because you have mobile telephones here, so you are consuming a lot of energy from these server centers. But it's not just that; it's industry and so on. So, in European perspective, they started to make these certificates. So if Audi wants to continue to grow and they want to use energy, then we talked about that. Then they can buy these certificates so that somebody plants a tree in South America. Then you have to build up a system that can control this. But then they started to discuss, if we can't reach the 100% green energy in Europe, what can we do then else? Well, we could have a business model ecosystem. You remember we talked about business model ecosystem. And this, we would like to claim that in Europe, we are 100% green. But our challenge is we cannot get the solar, we cannot get the windmill, we cannot get the biogas to come up to 100%. What to do? What shall we do? This is why the business model ecosystem is an important part of our framework. A business model ecosystem defines the kind of umbrella, the surrounding of a market or a business model ecosystem. So the simple thing we could do is we change the rule sets of the business model ecosystem so that what is defined as green, we defined also that nuclear power is green. That was not done before. So 5 years ago, the European Union, they simply changed the rule sets of the ecosystem so that nuclear power is also claimed as being green. We know that nuclear power needs storage of something in the underground. I will not tell about it. It's something that we should not touch on, I know. And I know also that in Ukraine, when the Russians, they hit the nuclear power station in Chernobyl, then everybody got shaking, especially up in the north, in Denmark and Finland and so on, because we knew from past that if something goes wrong, then the wind will bring the poison up to our part, and we can't do anything about it. So they classified nuclear power as green, and that helped them to come up in percentage of what was green. Do you get my point? You simply change the rule set of the ecosystem, and then you can meet the goal. That's smart. And with these words, I think we need a strong cup of coffee. Break.